Okay, President Reed, you can unmute yourself and you can now begin.
Thank you. The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus,
Present.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Present.
Alderman Bosley,
Present.
Alderwoman Evans,
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Present.
Alderwoman Ingracia,
Present.
Alderman Coder,
Here.
Alderwoman Rice,
Present.
Alderman Gunther,
Here.
Alderman Vollmer,
Present.
Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Grass, Alderwoman Murphy,
Here.
Alderwoman Howard,
Present.
Alderwoman Green,
Present.
Alderman Odenberg,
Present.
Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Todd,
Present.
Alderwoman Davis,
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad,
Here.
Alderman Boyd,
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Present.
Alderman Narayan,
Present.
Alderman Cone,
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Present.
Alderwoman Navarro,
Present.
President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Grass,
Here.
Alderman Rhodey,
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Present.
28 present, you have quorum.
Quorum being present, we will begin today with prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority. We humbly ask guidance in our deliberation and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We dispense with line item 3, introduction of honor guests. Any introduction of honor guests. Alderman from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As always, I'd like to have my friend Greg Meyer as my special guest.
Welcome, Greg. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Today is July 14th. On this day in 1983, the Mario Brothers game was released by Nintendo. In 1969, the movie Easy Rider came out. But more importantly, this is 2 holidays in one. It's Macaroni and Cheese Day and National Nude Day. So you can have a nude noodle today. Enjoy yourself. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Approval of the minutes.
Approval of the minutes dated July 10th, 2020.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for approval of the minutes dated July the 10th, 2020.
Second.
Approved by Alderman from 22nd, seconded by Alderman from 10th. Any discussion?
Roll call.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans,
Present, and there's no E after my name in Dwindlerland.
I'm sorry, when you voting present?
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Grass.
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, was that Martin that said aye?
Yes, thank you.
Alderwoman Grass.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Rhodey.
Aye.
Alderman Todd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaquero.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark.
Present.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus.
I'll follow your lead.
Uh,
Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Muhammad. "24 aye votes and 3 present.
I would like to change my present vote to aye. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. The other one from the fourth vote should be recorded as an aye.
25 aye votes and 2 present.
By vote, stay in the motion, Alderman from the 22nd, and adopted the minutes of July 10th, 2020. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the alderman's mailboxes.
Alderwoman from the first, you have your hand up.
I wanted to ask about the report of the city official about the mayor's report B, if that's appropriate when we get to that.
Yes, we're there right now, so please proceed.
Okay. So I am trying to understand, board bill number 52 was disapproved and vetoed by the mayor because of which letter from Julian Bush? Do you know?
No.
Because I got a couple of them this week.
Yeah. Madam Clerk, or Mr. Clerk, is the letter that the mayor references in the report of the office of the mayor from the city councilor Julian Bush. Is that letter on the drive related to board bill number 52?
It
Yes,
is, Mr. President.
All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
It's
Okay,
under
I'll go back and read it.
It's under folder communications.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I'll read it.
Okay, thank you. We've dispensed with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? We dispense with line items. One more time, nobody wants to put. We'll dispense with line items 8 through 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 97, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance relating to the City of St. Louis response to people who are unhoused living on public property and setting standards and procedures for remedying unsafe conditions and protecting the rights and property of unhoused individuals, including a severability clause and an emergency clause. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference in committee.
To the Legislation Committee, Board Bill 96, that is the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
The following board bill was reported out of the Streets Committee with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 91, sponsored by Alderwoman Hubbard, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate above surface and subsurface rights for vehicle, equestrian, and pedestrian travel in Montgomery from Glasgow easterly feet to a point previously vacated by ordinance 66616 and the 15-foot wide north-south alley in City Block 1897, beginning at Montgomery, and extending 118.67 feet to a point previously vacated by ordinance 66616 in the City of St. Louis, Missouri, as hereinafter described in accordance with Charter Authority and in conformity with Article 1(4) of Article 21 of the Charter and imposing certain conditions on such vacation. The following board bill was reported out of Legislation Committee with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 77 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Muhammad and Alderman Vaccaro. An ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the City of St. Louis a proposed amendment to the Charter of the City of St. Louis to maintain a Board of Aldermen as a body of 28 aldermen representing 28 wards and preventing its reduction beginning December 31st, 2020 to a body of 14 aldermen representing 14 wards as called for under Article 1, Section 3 of the City of St. Louis Charter, providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed amendment and the manner for the voting and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance containing an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of Public Safety with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 95, sponsored by Alderwoman Rice and the following alderpersons: Muhammad, Todd, Narayan, Bosley, Spencer, Ingracia, Martin, Green, Gunther, and Clark Hubbard. An ordinance setting forth regulations for the use of surveillance technology by the City of St. Louis, requiring surveillance technology usage, rules, regulations, specific technologies, and guidelines to be established and approved by the Board of Aldermen before any such surveillance technology may be used, and plans may be put into practice, and contain the severability clause and an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of Health and Human Services with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 27 as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Rice, Alderwoman Spencer, and Alderwoman Middlebrook. An ordinance requiring third-party food delivery services and certain food establishments to display City Health Department performance and risk-based inspection letter grades on the platforms used for taking online orders, and prohibiting third-party food delivery services from imposing requirements regarding purchase prices covered establishments may charge for orders of food and beverages or goods, and capping fees charged food establishments by third-party food delivery services, and requiring third-party food delivery services to obtain a business license, requiring third-party delivery services to disclose commissions charged food establishments by the third-party food delivery service, and requiring third-party food delivery services and food establishment to disclose gratuity policies for delivery workers, and contain an emergency clause and a severability clause. That is the extent of second reading report of standing committees.
We'll dispense with line item 14. Madam Clerk, please place move Board Bill 44 from the perfection consent calendar and to the bottom of the regular perfection calendar.
Mr. President,
Yes.
am I okay to be recognized? I was hoping to make a motion to move to suspend the rules.
For,
Board Bill 27 as amended, moving it to the perfection calendar.
Second.
I have not recognized her for the motion yet, so you can hold on a second. So, said Board Bill 27 as amended.
That's correct.
You'd like to move that from the second reading to the regular perfection calendar.
I would.
All right, I recognize you on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend the rules to move Board Bill 27 as amended to the perfection calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th. I entertain a second on that motion. Who is the second again?
Alderwoman Green.
Alderwoman from the 15th. It's moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 15th, that we suspend our rules for the purposes of moving Board Bill 27 as amended to the regular perfection calendar. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Negracia.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Grass.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Todd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said aye. It was muted. I'm sorry.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad. "25 aye votes and 1 present.
I vote you stay in motion, Alderwoman from the 6th, and move Board Bill 27 as amended to the regular perfection calendar. Clerk, please place Board Bill 27 as amended at the end of the regular perfection calendar.
So noted.
All right, Alderwoman from the 27th.
I'm sorry, I didn't have a question. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Okay, all right. Board perfection consent.
We have none.
Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 44, sponsored by Alderman Narayan, an ordinance for regulation and control of air pollution within the city of St. Louis, repealing ordinance 68137 approved October 31st, 2008. Ordinance 70607, approved July 19th, 2017. And ordinance 71146, approved May 7th, 2020, pertaining to the regulation and control of air pollution, and enacting in lieu thereof a new ordinance for the purposes of clarity pertaining to the same subject matter, and containing a severability clause, a penalty clause, and an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 24th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill 44.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we perfect Board Bill 44.
Moved by Alderman from the 24th, entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
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 Seconded by the Alderwoman from the 14th, I believe, and a number of others. I didn't catch. Alderman from the 24th, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This board bill it's virtually the same board bill as what came before us last session. I believe it was maybe 210. It was the air quality bill that came before us last session, where Miss Teresa Page came and gave her testimony both in committee and then before the full board. After that board bill had gone into effect and been codified, Janine Arraghi from the health department here raised a couple of issues with the bill that we knew based on a couple of procedural matters that we didn't have an opportunity to get fixed at that time. There was some struck through language that this removes, and there was an issue with the fee schedule being different than the bill changed the fee structure from the city's website and from what St. Louis County's is. And so this brings that bill back into, or excuse me, this brings that fee structure back into parity with the city website and with the county. This essentially is just cleaning up a bill that's already passed. This is essentially just a ministerial act at this point. There's no significant change in language. And this is something that Ms. Arraghi from the health department requested that we get through before we go on break in order to ensure that the health department can have good air quality standards sooner rather than later. So I would ask if anyone has any changes to it that we discuss those after the break so that we can get this through so that the health department can operate under a meaningful health code during our break. And with that, I'm happy to yield to any questions or anything like that.
Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I asked for this board bill to be taken off a perfection consent calendar because I have been over the years raising a lot of heck about minority contractors who don't get to be included in a lot of our contracts. And sometimes we make rules and regulations that adversely affect them. And so when I was the chair of public safety, I remember it came before me, John Triplett, the former 6th Ward Alderwoman's father came before me because we had a rule about 14 that air conditioners could be so large and that they could still be broken up, and the minority contractors got to do the smaller air conditioners. Well, they wanted a rule that changed everything, and it was for the unions, and it was good for the unions, but it was bad for the minority contractors. This is what I got from some minority contractors who are in demolition saying that the rule changes are adversely affecting them. And also, I got the calls from the state senators about the same thing. I will tell you, I haven't had time to go into the weeds and read, but I was wondering if the alderman from the 24th would yield.
Absolutely.
Alderwoman, please proceed.
Alderman, have you had any chance to talk with any minority contractors? Because I told them, and I tell you, they just called me these last few days. I told them that you were very reasonable and that you would probably welcome a conversation with them if it was something that was unintended consequence of having an adverse effect on minority contractors. So have you talked to any of minority contractors or associations or anything to see how this might impact them?
So I've spoken with some folks in the committee hearing on this, as well as with, excuse me, the alderwoman from the 26th brought a few of these concerns up. This board bill is that same language that the minority contractors have raised an issue with was in the board bill that passed unanimously 4 months ago. So what this current board bill pretends to do is to just clean up the language. This is a workers' protection that was put in place to stop the rigging of the system and to ensure higher air quality throughout the city of St. Louis, and to ensure that the workers themselves are the ones who get the certificates rather than the employers, so that they have the freedom to move from place to place. So this is ultimately a workers' rights bill. I know that they had raised some issues regarding apprenticeship programs. So I looked into that quite a bit to make sure that this wasn't going to put a hurdle that just couldn't be overcome by folks. And in return, I got 37 pages of documents of non-union shops that have Department of Labor registered apprenticeship programs, including an apprenticeship program here just over in Fenton. And so there are apprenticeship programs that are not union. So this wouldn't force anyone to go union if they did not want to. And again, this is a bill that everyone on this board, minus the alderwoman from the 4th and the alderwoman from the 12th, voted for. We passed this unanimously, and ultimately, this bill wasn't to seek to relitigate the workers' rights issues. It was simply to clean up some stuff at the request of Ms. Arraghi from the health department.
So I appreciate that. I remember voting for this because I remember you said you were gonna have to come back and clean up some language, but I had not been contacted by minority contractors, more than one. In particular, there's one young lady that I have watched grow, and she is very, very worried. It's a Black female, and she's very worried about this. And so I have to always listen, because sometimes I don't know how something affects somebody else. And I think I know it, and some other people are pushing it, and we're saying, oh, yeah, that'll be fine. I know there's some problems with our military bill that was passed, and it has had an undue effect or harshly on African Americans under the way it was set up. And so when I was the chair of the public employees, I actually had a chance to converse with our personnel director, and he said, oh yeah, that's really hurting Black people. So I don't think it was written to hurt Black people, but the numbers are doing that. So sometimes when we pass legislation, that's why I talk about unintended consequence. Sometimes people mean for that to be the consequence, but other times I don't think that it means to be. So when they reach out to me, it is my duty to bring this up, and I need to further investigate. So I right now cannot support the bill. I'm not opposed to it. I want us to have clean air, and I want us to have good laws, but I need to do my due diligence, which I have not had a time to do. So I will be voting present on this, and then I will be meeting with them later today in hopes of trying to get a better understanding of what the problem is, okay? Because if it is going to be something that hurt minority contractors, I cannot support that. Unless it's something that's going to blow up our community.
Alderwoman, I can assure you that there was no intent to harm any minority
Oh, I
contractors
know.
here. And if we get through this process and we do see that there's a major unintended consequence, I will certainly work with you to remedy that situation, keeping the spirit of this bill in mind.
Okay. I have no further questions, Mr. President.
Yes, ma'am. Alderman.
Okay, and I'm overstepping a little bit. We need to put another board bill on the perfection calendar. It's Alderwoman Davis's. And so I want to, before you get off of perfection, I need to request that and make sure she's okay with that so we can send it back to our committee. It was a little problem with board bill 64. And I just wanted to add it to the end of the agenda if she doesn't have a problem with that so we can perfect it properly and come back to the rules committee.
It's Board Bill 64 is on third reading. Consent.
But we didn't engross it because of a problem. So that's why I wanted it to see. And if she has a problem with it, okay. But I'm just trying to get it perfected so we can put it back in the committee. It was missing some attachments.
Oh, okay. But it's in committee, so we.
Yes, we have all the attachments and everything. So if we can re-perfect it, it can come right back to rules tomorrow.
All right, we'll just hold it off of the third reading, Cal.
Okay, and can we put it on the perfection so we can perfect it and have it right before us?
It was already perfected, so we would have to have some.
But but it needs to be, what I'm trying to say, there was a problem, so we could, and I'm kind of overstepping my boundaries a little bit, but it was a problem. If we bring it back out here, put it on the with perfection calendar, perfect it correctly, it can come back for our meeting in the morning, is the only thing I'm saying.
Okay, well, what we can do is we have to take it up,
suspend the rules. Okay, but
on side to bring
that's fine.
To the
okay, Alderwoman Davis can do that if she wants. That's what I was trying to get done.
Okay, we'll do that when we
thank you.
Get to it. Other board bills for perfection. Oh, hold on a second. Alderman from the 20th, you had questions on board bill number 44. Alderman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Just a moment, just a statement of clarity here. As the Alderman from the 24th pointed out, the bill that we are looking at today simply fixes an issue related to a bill that we passed last session. Some of the concerns that were brought up in the hearing and some, I presume, of the contractors that have come to the Alderwoman from the 1st, and I'd like to also point out the Alderman from the 26th has been very involved in identifying some issues with some of the minority contractors, are related to changes made previously. So this bill doesn't actually address those. It's just making some clerical issues. But I would like to add my name as the Chair of Health to the list of people that are committed to working on addressing any of the issues brought up by the minority contractors. I think we, as a committee, have a commitment to trying to address those issues. Following the passage of just these clerical issues with the bill, looking at some of the things that we may have addressed in the bill that we could maybe improve on if necessary moving forward. But just wanted to clarify that, any of the concerns are related to a bill that we passed last year. And just want to make sure that if we hold this bill up today, it's my understanding that the health department would not be in compliance with our law. This is putting us outside of step with regulations that we really need to be enforcing and could put us in a unfortunate legal position this summer. Is what the health department is kind of communicating to us at this point. So I just wanted to be mindful of that as we move forward. That's all I have on the matter, Mr. President. So I hand over the mic.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman from the 11th.
I lowered my hand. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on Board Bill 44? Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I will admit that I hadn't been following this bill as closely as I probably should have. And I feel that I do have some reservations about it. And I guess I don't truly understand the urgency, but if in fact we haven't been able to talk to minority contractors to see how this will impact them, I don't feel that it's something that we should move forward with, then try to come back and trust that someone else will go above and beyond to try to address those concerns. If it's not a true time-sensitive issue for us to rush it, I would encourage all of my colleagues to either vote no or recommend that we put this on the informal calendar until we can have more discussion about it. And that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to inquire of the Alderman from the 24th, please.
Alderman from the 24th. Another question to the Alderman from the 11th.
Absolutely.
Alderman from
Thank
the
you. Thank you. So we had on the health committee, there were several contractors that came in, minority contractors that came in to testify, both union and non-union. What I gleaned, and I was just going to ask you, is that anyone can bid on these projects as long as there's an apprenticeship program, correct?
Absolutely.
They meet those apprenticeship requirements.
Well,
and there,
I shouldn't say anyone. I should elaborate on that answer. Yes. However, not this current bill, the previous bill did remove some conflicts of interest. So you couldn't both do the testing to see if asbestos was present and then do the demolition work. And that is because people were rigging the system. They were testing to show that there was either more or less asbestos present than there actually is, in order to raise and lower the bids and the costs of the ultimate demolition work. So part of this bill does change the ability of any contractor across the board to both test for the presence of asbestos and then do the demolition work. So I just want to be clear there. But yes,
okay.
Going through the apprenticeship program, anyone can go through the apprenticeship program and then do the work. They just are not able to do both sides of the work.
Okay, and also these are apprenticeship requirements set forth by the state, correct? By the Department of Labor?
The Department of Labor, yes.
Okay, but it doesn't have to be union, correct?
Absolutely not.
Anyone can engage in that, yeah. I mean, the apprentice, I feel like we kind of, sometimes this gets lost in these conversations, which I, completely understand. We want to make sure it's a fair process. I have a minority female contractor in my ward, a constituent I've been working with, and I see firsthand, just working with her, just some of the processes that can be a little difficult sometimes, and the hurdles. And as a woman, I feel her pain on that. But also I feel strongly that we need to uplift these apprenticeship programs that are, these men and women get paid a living wage. It's not like some of us who came out of college with debt. They get a paid living wage. They get incredible health insurance a lot of the times, to get trained for these job skills that will continue to pay, these jobs that continue to pay great wages. So I think sometimes that the importance of these apprenticeship programs are lost in these conversations. And also, I don't know if anyone remembers, but two workers who had not gone through the same type of training that these apprenticeship programs offer, unfortunately, were killed in an elevator shaft during one of these abatements downtown. I don't know if anybody remembers that a couple of years ago, but that's just something really important to remember. And it just kind of focuses the importance on the workers, and then also just in addition to the air quality issues too. So, and one other thing, I just want to add that for those of our colleagues who haven't watched the health disparity presentation that was in health about 3 or 4 weeks ago, talking about our air quality disparities in the city of St. Louis, I think that's really important. Everyone should go watch that. It doesn't take much time, but it's pretty eye-opening. So, well, thank you very much for letting me talk your ear off, Alderman from the 24th. And with that, I'm done.
Anytime.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Alderman from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the Alderman from the 24th yield.
Alderman from the 24th will yield the question to the Alderman from the 22nd.
Yes, I will.
Alderman from the 22nd, please proceed.
Thank you, Alderman. So my understanding is this bill is basically a cleanup bill, taking care of some technical issues. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay, but also there is some anxiety and concern from minority contractors. And it sounded like you said you're in agreement to changing a language to compromise with people who feel they may be negatively impacted. Is that correct?
I'm certainly willing, if people are negatively impacted by this, I'm certainly willing to have a discussion and figure out if we may be able to tweak anything that keeps the spirit of this bill alive, which is to ensure that workers are protected and to prevent the idea that the fox is guarding the hen house on these conflicts of interest, and to ensure that when workers are dealing with asbestos, that they are properly trained and certified and have the knowledge base, because asbestos is something so dangerous and so just malignant throughout our region, that when workers aren't skilled, aren't certified, don't know what they're doing working with asbestos, they end up killing themselves and they end up killing other people. And so, I mean, this is high stakes poker here, and I am 100% willing to sit down with anyone. I always am. But I do believe that the protections put forward in this are very important, and I would be very hesitant to start rolling back a workers' protection that passed this board unanimously 4 months ago without some real sit-down discussions and an understanding on what exactly needed to be changed in order to make this legislation work for everyone. I'd want to know more about the issues themselves.
Sure. And certainly I'm an advocate for training and wanting to make sure that people are properly trained when they're working around asbestos, because that is a serious contaminant that causes grave health issues. But in light of some of the conversation that we're having today, would you mind if it just goes on the perfection informal calendar so that we can have more discussion about it? I understand if we do nothing today, it's going to move the way it is with the language currently. But if there's an opportunity for us to make it better, and it is my understanding that there has been some communications with the Alderman from the 26th. I'm not sure if she would like to get in this conversation or not. I would certainly want to hear what she has to say, if she doesn't mind. Maybe that would help some of us better understand what's going on, since we weren't part of those discussions. But in light of some of the conversation that we've had, it's given me a reason to pause. And if we're going to amend the bill again, if it passes today or this week, we can just kind of make this a better bill before it gets third read and finally passed. Those are my thoughts. So
I understand that, and if we were another few weeks back in the session, I would certainly be more open to that. My concern now is, the entire purpose of this bill. Ms. Arragee from the Health Department let me know that there were some issues that were holding up the Health Department from effectively doing their job. And so if we put this on informal, that means that it's going to be several months now where we don't have a meaningful air quality control in the city of St. Louis. So I think it's important that we get this through so that our health department can do their job while we have these conversations, rather than handcuffing our health department and removing the protections that we kind of that this bill intended to put into place and readdress concerns while our health department is in a position to effectively look out for the health interests of the residents of the city, rather than sidelining our health department and not allowing them to do what they need to do, not allowing these permits to go through, not allowing the fee schedule to get back into parity with the county, forcing our health department employees to refer to an ordinance that has as much struck through language as it has non-struck through language in it. So I would certainly ask that if anyone's on the fence about this, I welcome them to the table to discuss it, but I would ask that they assist me in getting this through so that our health department can do their job while we're having these discussions.
Okay.
Anything further, Alderman, from the 22nd?
Sure. With the Alderwoman from the 26th yield.
Alderman from the 26th will yield the question to the Alderman from the 22nd. Alderwoman from the 26th, will you yield the question to the Alderman?
Yes. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I'm having bad connection. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Alderman from the 26th.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Alderwoman. It's been said that you've been having conversations about some of the issues that the minority contractors have anxieties about. So can you enlighten us on a little bit of that?
Sure. The conversation I had was with one of my constituents. His name is Frank Wilson. He is a minority contractor in the city of St. Louis. He reached out to me the morning of the meeting, the health committee meeting. And so I joined him to support him on the health committee meeting. He emailed some concerns that he forwarded to the entire health committee group. And then after that, we had some conversations where Chairman Kara Alderwoman Smith said that she would have meetings. Also, some of the lobbyists said that they would have some meetings, along with Alderman Ryan said that they would have some meetings to clear up the concerns in the bill that had already passed. This bill today was just cleaning up some language. And so it was from my understanding that whether we vote this today or not, this still would be the same. We would still be in the same place as it relates to the building, as it relates to the law. So what we were trying to do for the time, during to the time sensitivity issue, was to do this one and then work to make sure that we correct and offer some amendments in September.
Okay, thank you, Alderwoman.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I have no further questions.
Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 24th would yield.
Alderman from the 24th will yield the question to the Alderman from the 1st.
Absolutely.
Alderman from the 1st.
Okay.
I had my hand up.
Yeah, her hand was up earlier.
Mr. President, I've spoken before, so I would yield to the Alderwoman from the 14th, if that's all right with you.
Alderwoman from the 14th, you recognize. Those hands keep popping up and down. So
that's fine. Will the Alderman from the 24th yield for a question?
Alderman.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Pardon me.
Alderman, you keep referencing the urgency for the health department. Can you be more specific as to how this would hamper their work specifically? I think that would give us some better understanding.
I believe that the Alderman from the 20th may be in a better position to answer that question than I am. My understanding from talking to Ms. Arraghi was that right now they're having a heck of a time, both with the struck through language as well as the fee structure in the bill not being, in the ordinance not being the same as the fee structure on the website, which is giving them fits over there and slowing everything down. But I believe that the Alderwoman from the 20th may have a more substantive answer for you.
Okay, will the Alderwoman from the 20th yield to questions?
Alderman from the 20th, we yield a question to Alderman from the 14th.
I will.
Alderman from the 14th, please proceed.
Alderwoman, how does this affect, would this shut down what the health department does? I guess what they do is issue permits for demolition and so forth. And I'm not quite sure how this impacts the health department and their function. Can you explain that to us?
It's kind of complicated. You may remember a couple of years ago, we did an air quality bill where, I could take a step, give you the history. The state used to fund air monitoring throughout the state of Missouri, and they used to fund cities to do that. In 2010, through nothing more than a line item veto, Governor Nixon eliminated funding to cities to monitor air, which was really disastrous for St. Louis because we could no longer afford to do any of those inspections. And so what happened is the state of Missouri took over. We had one inspector for the entire sort of St. Louis region. It was St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and even broader than that. So they're really, for one inspector covering that area, we weren't really ensuring compliance with our laws, and they were enforcing state laws rather than city laws. And in a city, you have people living much more closely together. You have demolitions and other things that really impact air quality. So we have higher standards than you would find in rural Missouri for asbestos and other contaminants that can go in the air. If you demolish an old building in the middle of the countryside, it's not going to impact your community as much as it would if you demolish a building full of asbestos here in Graveway Park, where the particulate matter will just go to lots of different members of your community because people live so much closer. So in 2016, I started working with the health department on trying to localize our air monitoring. And at that time, we worked with a coalition of St. Louis County and St. Louis City to bring our ordinances in line with one another so that we could have a regional approach. And so that if you have demolition contractors, any kind of contractors that were interfacing with the city or county, there was some uniformity between the city and county on those issues. You didn't want contractors having to have totally different air regulation, in the same region. And that took us a couple of years to get to the culmination of a bill that we passed a couple of years ago that started this process. Now, the Alderman from the 24th took this a step further. Let me take a step back. Following the passage of that bill, we finally got our own air quality monitors here in the city of St. Louis. And we did that by redirecting the fee that the contractor paid previously to the state. We redirected it to the city of St. Louis, and it gets us about $150,000 a year in revenue, and that enables us to hire an air quality inspector. Alderman Narayan took this a step further with the bill he's got in place that further protects workers. The bill that passed last year, the concerns that are being raised by the minority contractors, and I have to agree. I mean, I think we should look into these. I mean, anytime contractors have concerns, we should look into them. But the bill that was passed last year puts those changes in place. And from to the point of the Alderman from the 21st, or excuse me, the 22nd. This bill it doesn't impact those concerns. I do think we should continue to have that dialogue. I'm committed to it. But the bill before us today simply puts in line what Alderman Narayan, the bill last year changed the fee structure so that we could generate more revenue for the city. But that puts us out of line with that regional agreement we have to make sure that the fees and the structures are uniform across the region. This fix puts us back in line with the regional approach, and I think helps keep us uniform. Allowing us to stay out of step here is problematic for the health department because they feel like maybe they're not operating within our current law because of the flaws in it. And the longer that this is the case, I think the more problematic it is for our health department, and we want to make sure that we don't put Dr. Eccles and his crew in jeopardy there. So it's a conflict here. I think the Alderwoman from the 5th brings up an excellent point. We often say we're going to go back and do things, and we sometimes don't do it. We should be committed here to continuing that dialogue. But I do think, just to protect Dr. Eccles and his crew, we could maybe fix this for the summer. I'm really grateful to hear the concerns of the full board, almost, it appears, here today, to continue to discuss how important it is to both protect workers and to protect the ability for minority contractors to do work within our city, especially at a time of very, very high unemployment and high vacancy and high need. And I think the commitment of the sponsor is there, the commitment of the health committee is there, and it sounds like the commitment of the board is here to continue the dialogue. I don't know if that answered all your questions, but it's very, very complicated. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I know. Basically, what you're saying is there's a disconnect between what is in the bill and what's published, and this resolves that. And the minority participation was a flaw in the first bill, I guess, or was not addressed as much as need be in the first bill. Is that correct?
The first bill made changes that have caused some. The first bill made changes that have caused some subsequent concerns in the minority contracting industry. And I think we need to take a look at how we can ensure both protection of workers and our minority contractors. I don't want to see a single minority contractor go out of business for any reason. And I wouldn't purport that I'm not saying that this bill that we passed last year would do that, but certainly that is a concern worthy of looking into it, ensuring that that doesn't happen. I'm committed to monitoring this through the summer, no pun intended, and making sure that that doesn't happen, and that we do have, if there are concerns about being unionized or being forced into that we make sure that we have a robust community that can ensure that isn't the case. But leaving this without adjusting those technical problems doesn't fix the concerns. It doesn't revert us back to a bill before the concerns raised by the minority contractors. It simply prolongs the amount of time that the health department is at risk for not being within our law. And with all the things that the health department has right now, I do know that this is causing a significant amount of stress within the department, a department that's already really overburdened, I hate to see them continue to be burdened, with the stress of not being within compliance.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as I listened to the Alderwoman from the 20th, and I remember when we actually were at meetings, it was the young lady's birthday and we had to change things and get things done. So I kind of remember that meeting vividly. But what I hear is that once this bill went into effect, contractors, Black contractors, minority contractors said, hey, this is affecting us. So when people say that, I want people to take note and to address it. So what we're saying is what I hear is that we're more concerned in fitting in with the rest of the group than resolving this problem, because obviously they learned pretty soon with the changes that we did with the original bill that there was problems. So I am of the mindset there's no time like the present to fix problems about minority participation. In the many, many years I've been here, most of the times we do not reach the numbers we're supposed to in minority participation. And I want good air quality. I don't want the fox to guard the hen house, but I don't want to disregard minority participation. That is very, very important. And so sometimes you have to do what's called hostage politics, which is that I'm not fixing your problem because you're not listening to my problem. And so in this case, I hear everybody saying, oh, we'll have a conversation, but let us get this passed. And what I am saying is, let's have that conversation now. The more I hear, You've convinced me. Let's have that conversation now and let's fix it, because maybe it's something easy to fix, or maybe it's something hard. But having that conversation down the line, and we're going to be in a recess for summer, and this is already adversely affecting them, is not a good position for me as a person who is an African American female, but also who has worked with the minority contractors, and so have been supported by them and know the pain that they go to. And every time we have a project with our house or with our properties, we try to make sure minorities are included. So I can't just say, well, we'll get back to you. There's no time like the present. And the people that called me are not people that called to lobby me often. So they were like in an uproar. I just didn't have time because we had the airport and all this other stuff that's on the table. So I didn't have time. But like I said, I can't vote for this at this point. And Mr. President, members of the board, if the alderman from the 24th would yield, I have a question for him.
From the 24th, we yield to the alderman from first.
Yes.
Okay, and so I agree with you. I have an uncle who died from asbestos. He worked up in the Ford motor plant. So I know the pain. He came to our last family reunion and we knew we would not see it again. Fairly young, because I think 70 is young now. So I agree with that part. But so is the problem that the minority contractors had, that as you understand it, is it a component of apprenticeships? Is that what the problem was, or was there something else? Did they enunciate or flush out more clearly what their problems was with the bill?
So I hesitate to paint with a broad brush here and say that all minority contractors are feeling this way or that way. In the committee,
right? I understand.
In the committee hearing, we actually had more minority contractors testify in favor of this bill than oppose it. Which I think is important to note. But the oppositions that were brought up were mostly in regard to the conflicts of interest. And that gets to the heart of the bill. And so I think that to sideline everything based on the concerns of the two folks who talked at the committee hearing, at least, that opposed it, I don't believe that is the correct thing to do, because then we're going with two people rather than sitting down and actually inviting people to the conversation, which may ultimately just exacerbate the problem that we're having here today, where people feel like they're left out of the discussion. Because, you know, this wasn't one-sided. This wasn't a situation where we loaded the committee hearing full of people. There were people who were genuinely in favor of this, and there were people who had concerns about it. And I think it's also important to note that this was the second opportunity to raise those concerns. And thus far, throughout two committee hearings and two second reads, two perfections, we've heard a few vague concerns from a few people that get to the heart of the
They trying to, yeah. What committee is it? No, this
that get to the heart of what we are trying to do with the workers' protection, with ensuring that the workers are the ones who maintain that certificate rather than the employer, because under the current system prior to this, well, I shouldn't say under the current system, prior to this, when certifications came through, they went to the employer, meaning that if the worker then left that employer, that you may have people working on the job who have no idea what they're doing, who can still say they're certified. So this ensures that in demolitions and abatement, that the conflicts of interest are gone, and that ultimately we're looking out for the residents of the city and the workers. I find it a bit strange that on a bill that we championed as a workers' rights bill over and over, and we've heard from workers of, all walks of life, that we're now here really debating things on behalf of the employers, who part of this bill was to protect workers from their employers, like what happened with Miss Page when she was removing those vinyl asbestos tiles, and she was told, go remove that tiles. She did not have the expertise to know that that was something that was going to be problematic for her. She went and did it because it's a VAT tile. Had she been told this is a vinyl asbestos tile, maybe she would know. Had she gone through an apprenticeship program, maybe she would know. If she had licensure, maybe she would know. If the person or the entity that bid the job had to bid the job in a fair way so that they were going to fairly compensate Miss Page for the asbestos abatement, then, that could have been avoided potentially. And so I do, as a small businessman, I do feel for any time there's an additional regulation that comes through. I am both a minority and a small businessman, so I understand the concerns. And this is one of the rare industries that I think we need a serious level of regulation on, because we've seen that the current regulations prior to what we're trying to fix now, they weren't working, and we were still having workers injured, and asbestos doesn't care whether you're a minority contractor or not.
I know.
A single exposure can kill you, and it can kill you a month from now. It could kill you 60 years from now. And so this not only protects the workers, it protects the bosses, and it protects the 6-year-old girl walking to school a block away after that wrecking ball goes through and that asbestos gets airborne. And so this is something that we need in order to protect the residents from the number one health equity indicator that is flawed in between the north side and the south side is actually air quality. And so when we handcuff our health department on air quality due to the concerns of very few people, I think that's a mistake. I think that instead we give our health department the tools to do what they need to do, and then we do our jobs, and we get back in these rooms and we sit down and we hash these things out, and we make sure that that our residents are protected and the interests of small business is protected.
Thank you. So that was going to be my other question. Was the level of support, as you saw it, maybe based on if it was a very small company versus maybe one that had more resources? Do you know, or you have any idea? Or not support?
I haven't had sufficient opportunity to really sit down and really get all the moving parts on where the concerns are, to the point of knowing it's a small company versus a large company. I think that is an important part of the discussion moving forward. But again, I would ask that we not handcuff our health department while we're having those discussions.
So, Alderman, as I said, I'm just going to vote present. I just haven't. I support everything what you're saying. Like I said, watching my uncle die, and last family reunion, and he's on. He's got oxygen with him, and we know we're not going to see him again. It's a painful thing, and so, and he was a vibrant man, and just reduced to nothing. And he was working in the Ford plant up in Detroit. So I do get what you're talking about. I'm concerned though, whenever people reach out to me and lobby me. I'm not one that is open up to a lot of lobbying. So this is a person who I really respect. And so I just haven't had enough time to hear what her side, because sometimes you just don't know the other person's side. So I'm just going to vote president. I'm not trying to hold it up, but I'm going to vote president. And I am going to reach out to her this evening to see if I can get more information about it. Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 26th.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. And members of the board, again, I just wanted to chime in and say that respectfully, kind of against what my colleague, Alderman Ryan just said, it was one person that reached out to me about this. He is a contractor and a worker. And the other entities that reached out subsequently from him are contractors and workers, and they are in our communities. And I apologize to him for dropping the ball and not catching something that I could have catched prior to this when the bill went past. But I believe in the spirit of the bill. I believe in the spirit of Ms. Page. We actually still stay in contact. It was kind of hard to hear her voice when you played it during the committee meeting. But the reality is, again, that what we're voting on today doesn't change the law of this bill. So we do have to come together and work together collectively. And I'm hoping that Alderman Ryan and others will be at that table more than that felt like they were not at the table before, to move forward with this and be ready in September to offer some amendments. So thank you again for the time and the commitment. But I did just want to chime in when I heard Alderman Ryan say it was a few. It's not a few, it's more than a few. It was a few on that health committee meeting. But even if it was one, which was what made me move my constituent, Mr. Wilson, I think we owe them the opportunity to have their concerns heard and addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from 23rd.
Yes, I've been listening to everybody. I've raised and lowered my hand probably about 5 times because I've been all over the place. When I listen to everyone, I certainly agree with what Alderman Ryan is saying, but I also noticed that the caucus in particular, the Black members, seem to have a real concern, which bothers me a lot. I'm one that I'll either vote president, or I would ask if you would consider, because it's really a short recess. In fact, if we keep having extra meetings, the recess might only be a day long because we keep on having more and more meetings. And I will blame myself, because I certainly know that I could sit in on any committee meeting, and I did not sit in on the health committee meetings. Usually I don't always sit in on meetings, so I will blame myself. But if I just want you to know, in case you're counting votes or you're thinking, okay, well, this is how, I don't want you to accidentally kill this if moving it out a little bit would be helpful. So I'm just letting you know, it's so much easier when we're all together that we can talk to each other. It feels kind of silly having to do this, but if you're counting votes, on perfection, it's a simple majority, but I'm sure that I'll be present on this with the hope that we can get this worked out. I don't know that there's a real answer. And I do respect what you're doing. I guess I'm not as much up to speed as I should be. So I just want you to know, if you're counting votes, just understand I'm present. Doesn't mean that I'm not supporting what you're doing. It's just, I guess I'm not informed enough to vote. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Let's see if this.
I was muted. Alderwoman from the 19th. I forgot to unmute myself.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I've had a chance to listen, but I've also had a chance to experience. And the history of this whole asbestos profession has a lot of history to it. And right now, the minority contractors really have to protect themselves, because there was a point in time when we had free training for everybody for the asbestos program. And when nobody else wanted to do the job, and it was primarily minorities doing the work, and then the actual pay raised so high that all of a sudden now everybody wants to take it over. So we need to make sure that it's not impossible for them to participate, and make sure that the requirements allow them to not only provide the knowledge of training that is available to those who would like to be trained, but does not tie their hands as a small company that they would have to set up a training program. So I think we need to talk about this. And as long as this bill has been moving forward the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think that we could have had that conversation to get it cleared up. And I've worked too hard and too long with the minority contractors and making sure that there's equity. And I'm not one to back down at this point. So I think it would behoove us to put it on the informal calendar. And I think that if we move hastily to make sure that the appropriate meetings are held, I think that we will be okay. Because when we talk about entities, you have to remember that the coalitions that are out here that are trying to work together to make sure that they have equity, they don't have the luxury of hiring lobbyists. They don't have the luxury of having fancy offices that have people sitting in them to take care of the paperwork that needs to be done. The owner is working just like his laborers. So I want to make sure that we get this right. And if we've been doing it this way for, I don't know how many years, it's not going to hurt for another month or two. So I would really request the sponsor of the bill to reconsider and put it on the informal calendar, and everybody come together and make sure that all entities are present and that this has resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. With the Alderman from the 24th yield.
Alderman from the 24th to yield the question to the Alderman from the 3rd.
Absolutely.
3rd, please proceed.
Appreciate it. I just want to be very respectful with this, just so we can be, just want to be balanced. I'm not going to ask too many questions, but you are a minority, correct?
Absolutely.
Have any minorities at all come to you and told you that this is good for them in any way?
Yes.
Do you have any letters or any support letters, anything that can support, not saying that you yourself are not credible, but when things like this come up and you do have individuals in bulk, and this is not just on your bill, but on the ones before, also, we have already stated that this is something that minorities will feel like will affect them. After the bill was passed, they came out and said it affected them. Now we're saying we want to clean up some clerical things, and we still have not fixed what they have said or looked into what these individuals are saying affected them. We don't have a clear, concise idea as we're going back and forth on how it affects minorities. So as we're saying, we're going to take an effort to clean it up when they're already voicing opinions on something that pre-exists is hurting them. I think it already states this. We're off on the wrong foot. So if at bare minimum, we don't have companies that can come forth and say, I support this, this is why, and this is why other minorities should get on board, because this is about minorities. It's not just about air pollution. Now, let's keep it real. We know for sure that on the north side of St. Louis, we have 3 times likely higher risk of getting asthma and any other diseases that come from air pollution. That's real. We know that a lot of our buildings been torn down and built up over the years have not been checked. We know for sure that as development moves north, because it is, we have development plans that are being worked out for certain parts of the north side right now. We have over 12,000 parcels that the city owns, LRA. And as developers come in and want to tear things down, the minorities that exist right now are afraid that they will not have the opportunity as they do right now. They dominate the demolitions on our side of town. When more money starts to come, those things will be something that is non-existent for them if we put more levels of scrutiny on these permits and any other things that they may not be able to obtain based on not working with them from the jump, asking them, are these things obtainable? So there should be some type of balance or some type of report, something from the minorities who do agree with this, that gives us something in writing that we can say why specifically these minorities agree and why these minorities disagree. Now, all of my sisters have asthma. My area is one of the worst in the entire city when you look at air pollution and asthma. We got it. I grew up in it. I was lucky enough not to catch it. I also understand that if we had more money in the neighborhood, then we'd have more people doing the right thing. We are still in that same position that we were in 20 years ago when I moved into the third ward. And that's not because of the individuals that live there. This is actually a systemic thing that has happened over time. We know for sure that the Delmore divide exists and a lot of other things. I won't dig into that because you are not a part of that destruction. But this is something that causes disruption. And when things are causing disruption, minorities generally don't have a voice. It's like, push it through. Let's ensure that this gets done. Why? Because it's for them. Nobody on the South Side or further south are suffering from the same amount of air pollution we are. So when we are saying that, hey, hold on, this needs to be looked at a second wave, and then you are saying, no, you need it. You need it for this, you need it for that. The unions are saying we need this. These aren't regular minorities. I know for sure the unions came to you about this because I know the people in the unions, right? Can I ask that question? Did the unions not approach you?
I absolutely spoke to the unions about this. I spoke to labor about this issue for quite some time. To address your earlier point regarding the minorities that do support this, we heard from several minority contractors and minority workers who do support this in the committee hearing. In fact, the committee hearing just a few days back was the first time that I had heard any concern from minority contractors on it. We had Corey Elliott come and talk about it. We had CMT Construction come talk about it, both in favor, as well as I believe three others that I can't name just off the top of my head. But if you were to go back and watch the committee hearing on the matter, there were actually more minority contractors and minority workers in favor of continuing these protections than had opposed the protections. And I'm certainly not trying to run anything roughshod, ram anything down anyone's throat here.
I don't think you are. This is not, so let me make sure I'm clear. It's not about you particularly, because a lot of times we get, and that's why I mentioned the unions. We get this information from individuals who tell us, who are working in the field every day, why this is a good move to move the city forward. So it's not about you are the person. You are one of the people that I believe, well, everybody has good intent, but we all have different perspectives. So I definitely believe that your perspective is pure and your intent is also. So in no way, shape, form, or fashion am I trying to say that you yourself as an individual are pushing anything on minorities. I do not believe that at all. So if I came off like that, my apologies.
No, not at all. I appreciate that. My only concern and the reason why I am pushing so firmly on this is the concern that is brought to me by the health department. And I guess additionally, the fact that by not fixing this, the issues with the bill that put the health department in compliance, that doesn't solve the underlying issue that we're discussing here today regarding the minority contracting. I am committed to sitting down and having a better opportunity to discuss this with more folks on both sides of the issue who have an interest, rather because what it seems to me is potentially that folks weren't watching this legislation as closely as maybe they would have liked to, and so we didn't get any weigh in on it until kind of late in the game. And now at the 13th hour, we're trying to make changes that would
Absolutely. And that is how politics works. When everything is happening and we got so many things going on at one time, things happen. And this is one of those things, when you catch it, you catch it. It's like, hey, whoa, I didn't see that ball coming, but I got it now. It's here. Let me take a look at it. Let me see how I can hold this and make it work, right? So with the construction companies or minorities, and not to cut you off, I apologize, who did agree to this, are they companies that work heavily with the unions? Are they non-union?
You know, I could not tell you just off the top of my head. I wish I could. If I knew, I would tell you.
And the reason that's an important question is because if they are working for the same individuals or with the same individuals who have the mutual interest, then, you know, of course, they would see eye to eye on the issue, and they bring individuals who agree with it. You know, so if those opposing voices were not there, and if, you know, we don't have an understanding clearly if these people work, represent, or have any type of connection with the union, I don't think it's fair to assess to say that that's a clear representation of the minorities who exist within this this scope of scope of the bill and what we're referring to. So,
and that point is well taken. Again, my only concern with this is that we're kind of hamstringing the health department, regardless of the outcome of this today. I am absolutely committed to sitting down at the table and making sure that we get this right. I understand the concerns. I do genuinely understand the concerns, and I do appreciate the fact that we're having this, you know, just 100% on policy, and you know, I feel committed to putting this forward today at the request of the health department. And if it fails today, then we'll readdress it. You know, I'll be working on it over break, and we'll readdress it.
So I would say, like with all of the more pressing things on the planet right now, COVID, we all are running from an invisible disease or bacteria that we can't see, right? There are so many more things that the entire planet is focused on, and air pollution should be one of them. But if we're going to talk construction and all these other things, I think a month or two for us to get back in session. If we're going to talk air pollution, let's let that be that own thing, right? We should be figuring out a way to ensure, with or without construction, how do we get these people to have better air? Because regardless whether this bill passes or not, babies that wake up and find themselves in the third ward or on the north side tomorrow are still going to wake up under these conditions that we are living under right now, right this second. There is no amount of bills today that we can force through that's going to change the amount of air that we're breathing in tomorrow that's toxic to our lungs. And if that is the focus, then that should be the focus on its own. That should be something that we all are looking at, where we can have some you know, a united front on the board saying we want a better quality of air in the city of St. Louis, period. And we definitely want it for those who have not had it, who does not have the chance to, you know, run and have clear lungs before they get to the age of 13. So once again, if that's something that we want to focus on as a city, and let that be a conduit into all of other companies, ensuring whatever they output in emissions and everything else is up to quality within the city, then that's fine. But let that be the focus, and let's not tie it in with a million other things that we are going to end up feeling like there's controversy behind, because there's other folks that are involved who feel left out. This is about air. And if that's what the focus is, if that's what the health department is saying, this is about air, we are holding them up for being able to give us better air quality, then let's look into some ways where it has nothing to do with construction that gives us a better air quality in general. So we're not even talking about the unions or this or that. There are plenty of things we can look into. And I think right now, this is not the perfect time with everything that's going on and so many things that we have to focus on outside of just the board. If this is a change that we feel like is a structural change for individuals who depend on money right now, which every single contractor out there that's minority, they depend on every dime and every dollar and every contract they get with the city. The harder we make it for them to get these contracts, the harder it is for them to feed their families. The harder it is for them to feed their families, the easier it is for us to go back out into our neighborhoods and find alternative methods. That is not the way that we should be working as a city, and that's not the way I think that you intend for these things to go. But everything has unintended consequences, whether positive or negative. This is something that we already see has already negatively impacted some people, and we have not looked into that just yet. Imagine the folks who have not spoken up. I just want to lay that out there. I appreciate what you're trying to do for us. With that, I yield the floor. Thank you, brother. Unless you want to say something else, I don't want to just cut it off.
I would just like to say one thing. So, you know, when I came here today, I was pretty committed to just letting the chips fall where they may on this, because it seems like, you know, we're just going to have the status quo if it were to fail. But I think that there's been enough concern brought to my attention about it, that if the folks who have addressed these concerns will help me get to the table with some of the concerned parties that they're talking about, that I'd be willing to move this over to the informal, and then we can sit down, we can have some serious discussions about how this is going to affect both workers and smaller contractors, and move forward from there. Would you be willing to help me out with that?
100%, bro. You ask, I'm there.
Awesome.
We will figure it out together.
Well, with that, President Reed, I would like to move this board bill to the informal calendar.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Place Board Bill 44 on the perfection informal calendar.
So noted. Board Bill 27 as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Rice, Alderwoman Spencer, and Alderwoman Middlebrook. An ordinance requiring third-party food delivery services in certain food establishments to display City Health Department performance and risk-based inspection letter grades on the platforms used for taking online orders, and prohibiting third-party food delivery services from imposing requirements regarding purchase price covered establishment may charge for orders of food and beverages or goods, and capping fees charged food establishment by third-party food delivery services, and requiring third-party food delivery services to obtain a business license, requiring third-party delivery services to disclose commission charged food establishment by the third-party food delivery service, and requiring third-party food delivery services and food establishment to disclose gratuity policies for delivery workers, and containing an emergency clause and a severability clause.
Alderwoman from the 6th, recognized on the perfectional Board Bill 27 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we perfect Board Bill 27 as amended.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th. Entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
Seconded by Alderwoman from the 8th. Alderwoman from the 6th, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This board bill is in response to a lot of conversations I think many of us have had concerning our small businesses and independent businesses here in the city of St. Louis. trying to help them stay afloat during the pandemic that is really making their business suffer at a level that's, I think, pretty unprecedented. And so I've been really grateful for the partnership of my co-sponsors, the businesses that I've worked with, Uber Eats, which is one of the third-party delivery platforms, as well as DoorDash. We spent a decent amount of time coming to a place where we were able to compromise. So overall, this bill would require third-party delivery services to obtain a business license. Right now, none of the operators that are currently undertaking this work in the city of St. Louis, only one of them has a current business license. It would also cap all fees and commissions that are charged to our local businesses at no more than 20%. That's including but not limited to things like delivery fees, credit card fees, advertising, promotions, and marketing. It would also require these platforms to disclose to their customers, folks like you and I who are ordering maybe lunch or dinner from these places, to confirm that the delivery drivers are receiving the full amount of the gratuity that we intend for them to do so, and that it's also not being calculated as a part of their base pay. It's something that is extra for them. It also creates an exemption for small local delivery services. We do have one bike service here in the city of St. Louis. This would exempt them from the restrictions that we're imposing on some of these larger national platforms. And it also includes a sunset 60 days after the mayor would lift her proclamation that we're currently under during this pandemic. We would have to revisit this bill if we were interested in continuing to have some of the same requirements and restrictions placed on the platforms. I'm happy to take questions if my colleagues have them.
Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I just wanted to echo comments in support of this board bill and thank the Alderwoman for the 6th for her work on this. I know it took a while and there was some compromise and various drafts. We're working with the restaurant industry, working with the delivery companies, but I think this is a good result and is going to be very helpful to our local bars and restaurants who, you know, many of whom when they signed contracts with these services, you know, delivery was just a small part of their business and this was some added incentive, but as their model has had to shift to all takeout and delivery, it became clear that some of these commissions that were being collected were exorbitant. And I think this is a good result. And I'm glad that the delivery companies came to the table and worked with the Alderwoman from the 6th on this. So I would ask to be added as a co-sponsor and we'll be voting in support of this. Thank you, Alderwoman.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that the Alderman from the 7th as a co-sponsor to.
Oh, no.
7 as amended. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to be added as a co-sponsor to the bill.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that at the Alderman from.
So noted.
Alderman from the 20th. Alderman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I just wanted to make sure that I was added as a sponsor. I believe I did that yesterday, but I wanted to also commend the Alderman from the 6th. This was an enormous amount of work as evidenced by the massive amount of little amendments we put in yesterday just to address all the concerns of the business owners across the city. And this, I think, is a step in the right direction, a nod to our small businesses who have really been negatively impacted through this. And so the leadership of the Alderwoman from the 6th doing all the dirty work behind the scenes to make sure that everyone that I could see is pleased with the result is an incredible feat and something that we should really commend her for.
All right, thank you.
All I have, thank you.
Alderman from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also just wanted to make sure that my name was added. I was in the hearing yesterday and it asked to be added to the co-sponsor, but I didn't see my name on the agenda this morning. So just confirming.
Please make note of that. Assure that Alderman from 28th has asked that her name be added. Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the clerk would add me as a co-sponsor as well, thank you.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Alderman from the 16th, Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank the Alderwoman from the 6th for her work on this and request to be added as a co-sponsor.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. That Alderman from the 24th, Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to have my name added. I appreciate the effort that was put forward because this is really going to help a lot of small businesses. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. At Alderman from the 19th, Alderman from the 13th.
Yes, I would like my name added also, and I do appreciate all the work that the 6th Ward Alderwoman did too. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, please make note of that at Alderman from the 13th. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All right, Alderman from the 6th, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was a very refreshing interaction between my colleagues and I wish there were more of that down here. Appreciate everyone's kind words and support. And with that, I renew my motion.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 8th, that we perfect Board Bill 27 as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
That is the extent of board bills for perfection.
What's before us now? Alderman from the Alderman from the first. Yeah, you wanted to talk about the Board Bill 64.
So if the Alderman from the 19th, if I'm not overstepping, I don't want to step on something you don't want to do, but we did not engross 64. And so it was perfected without an attachment. And so I asked if we could bring it back out on the floor, put it back on the perfection calendar, perfect it, and then send it back into our committee so we could have it in our committee tomorrow morning. That's what I was trying to do, Mr. President.
Okay. We can't re-perfect the bill that's been perfected already.
Yes, you can, You can suspend the rules and put it back on the perfection calendar.
Yeah, our option is to, having voted on the prevailing side, move to reconsider the vote because the bill has already been perfected, right? So we'd have to move it back to the perfection calendar, having voted on the prevailing side. The challenge in this case is what was the date? Mr. Clerk, we need to know the date that the bill was perfected. Short of that. Alderman from the 20th.
Okay.
Alderman from the 20th.
Mr. President.
Alderman from the 1st, yes.
So when we have, so there is a procedure when the rules have problems to send it back. We didn't just, we send it back, get it correct it and bring it back in committee. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about from the last meeting.
Yeah, I'll allow,
okay.
I will allow it. So Alderwoman from the 19th, would you like to make a motion?
Oh, hey, wait a minute.
Alderman from the 23rd.
Thank you. I thought you recognized me, and then we were moving on. I have a technical question. If we do this, doesn't it require a 3-day before it can be engrossed? And my other question is, can't we just engross it as a committee of the whole? Those are my two questions. If this can go back and it's not going to have the 3-day holdup, which I believe it would have to, I'm asking the president of the board these questions, and I'd like answers, or at least give me somebody that can give me the answers.
I don't.
The clerk or the attorney for the board or somebody.
I can give you the answer. So I just found, so this bill was perfected on the 29th. So being perfected on the 29th, we cannot move to reconsider it at this point. It was perfected and the language within the bill that the language in the bill references the amendment, the attachment. The attachment was not loaded on the Google Drive. So the bill itself would not need to be amended if indeed the language in the bill itself referenced that attachment. And that's what we need to get from the Alderwoman from the 19th and also the Alderwoman from the first who reviewed it in engrossments. But the bill, if that is the case, that it referenced an attachment, but the attachment was not loaded on the drive, there isn't any need to amend the bill because the bill was adopted with the reference in there to the attachment. So that's what we need to find out. Alderman from the 23rd.
No, I appreciate that. The thing that was brought up in engrossments, and I just want to be clear, was that it was passed without the attachment.
Yeah, and
so, even though it was referenced,
yeah,
I just wanted to be clear because I know this is important that we get it through for the airport. This is not something that, you know, but I just want to make sure that we're making the right decisions. That's all.
Yes, if the bill itself referenced an attachment, and if the attachment was not on the Google Drive, that's one thing. But if the attachment is available, then we've taken. There isn't any need to re-perfect the bill, right? Which would be very problematic now because we'd have to move to reconsider the previous motion. Alderman from the 19th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I have been very respectful of the chairperson of the Rules Committee. My personal opinion, I shall voice now. A board bill was passed with a reference to an attachment. The reference to the attachment in passing this bill does not change the intent of the bill. The body of the bill stays the same, is the same, and the attachment was forwarded to that committee on today, I believe. Yeah, there was a committee meeting today. So it's only about a technical issue of a physical thing, but it's not about the actual intent of the bill, the wording of the bill, or needing to change any wording in the bill. So I am again going to leave it up to the clerk, the president, and the chairman of that committee. I personally don't think that we need to do anything any different, but I'm just an alderperson sponsoring a bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Alderman from the first.
Mr. President and members of the board, so I know the difference. That is why I asked, and it is on the Zoom meeting, if it was just something that was left off or was it perfected without that? That was my question, because that does make a big difference. If it is something that is just left off and it didn't get picked up, that's one thing. If it was perfected without the amendment, which is the very question that I asked and was told that it was, and so if there's a mistake, you can go and look at the Zoom meeting yourself. And so if it was perfected without that, then the only thing that we can do as our committee is engross it as is. Now, that's going to run down the line because when you get further down the line, when you have a bill and it's referenced by and incorporates by reference, and there is no attachment, then you can't incorporate it. So that's what I was trying to stop. So I specifically asked that question because there are two different events that could have happened. It could not have been loaded onto the Google Drive, which I also understand, or it was perfected without that, which is a different consideration. So I was told it was perfected without it.
Okay.
So that's why I did that. So here's my thing, I want to know. We did not, we are still have that other meeting going because we just recessed. So I can work with the clerk to find out, but that was already what I was told. And I don't want to be putting the clerk up under pressure or anything like that, but that was specifically asked. And we can only act on finding information when we request information because we don't have the time. I want to remind everyone, we're doing Zoom meetings. We sometimes have a hard time even having a meeting. We got to move these times around and other people are having their meetings when we are. So the response, and everyone can go look for themselves, was that it was perfected without it.
Okay. So Alderwoman from the 19th, would you like to place this on the third reading informal calendar, or would you like to adopt it on the third reading calendar? You can place it on the third reading informal calendar so we can get additional information from the clerk between now and Friday.
We don't need any additional information. We have everything.
All right, so you want to leave it on the third reading consent calendar.
As I shared with you, I am going to let all those people who have more authority over this than I do. I am interested in moving the bill on behalf of the airport because it is an important bill and we only have one banking service out there. So it would be important, but it's up to the chairperson of rules.
All right, so here are our options. We can move to suspend the rule that requires us to only reconsider these bills by the next regularly scheduled meeting, right? So that's the first thing we could do. And if we did that, then the next motion would be a motion to reconsider said bill, right? To move it back to the perfection calendar. And then the third motion after that would be a motion to perfect it with the amendments, right? And is that all on with the attachment? And my assumption is that all of that is on the drive now. And then after that, it will just be referred back. That's the cleanest way we can do it at this point. So,
okay.
So the first motion would be the motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of reconsidering the motion to perfect Board Bill 64.
I move to
suspend the rules for the
motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of reconsidering Board Bill number 64.
Second.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 19th, seconded by the Alderman from the 1st. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Evans.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Negracia.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Grass.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Rhodey.
Aye.
Alderman Todd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
28 aye votes.
They vote, stay in the motion, Alderman from the 19th. Now, Alderman from the 19th, your next motion needs to be, having voted on the prevailing side, you move to reconsider the vote to perfect Board Bill 64.
I'd like to make a motion,
Having voted on the
having voted on the prevailing side of Board Bill number 64 to reconsider the vote. Thank you.
It's been moved by the Alderman.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from the first. Any discussion? Is there a request for a previous roll?
Previous roll.
Motion carries. Now, Alderman from the 19th, would you like to move to perfect Board Bill 64?
Absolutely, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to move to perfect Board Bill number 64.
Moved by the Alderman from the 19th.
Second.
By the Alderman from the first. Any discussion? I think Alderman from 22nd said, made a request for previous roll. Been moved. There's been a request for previous roll. Motion carries. Now that will be assigned to rules and engrossments, and the attachment is on there.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any third reading consent?
I'm sorry. Board Bill 32, 43, 50, 68, 69, 73, 88, 89 as amended, 84, 20, and 92 as amended.
Madam Clerk, please, amend it without 88, 89, 84, 20, and 92 as amended. Those are going to be taken up in engrossments before Friday. They did not get to those. So read the list without 88, 89, 84, 20, and 92 as amended.
Board Bill 32, 43, 50, 68, 69, and 73.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
Second.
Moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye. Aye. Did you hear me? Aye.
Alderwoman Evans.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Alderwoman Grass.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Rhodey.
Aye.
Alderman Todd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
President Reed,
Aye.
Alderwoman Tyus,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. 28 aye votes.
I vote staying the motion of the Alderman from 22nd and 3rd read and finally passed the aforementioned bills. Third reading report of engrossments. Madam Clerk, we're going to place Board Bill 71 as amended on the informal count.
So noted. Board Bill 74, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving the First Amendment to Soccer Stadium Redevelopment Plan and the First Amendment to Master Redevelopment Agreement, and authorizing and directing the taking of other actions and approval and execution of other documents or as necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof.
Alderman from the 6th, you recognize on the third reading of Board Bill number 74.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 74.
Moved by Alderman from the 6th. Entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
Is that the Alderman from the 24th or the Alderman from the 7th? Any discussion? Alderman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, I request a roll call. I have no discussion.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 6th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I renew my motion.
It's been moved by Alderman from the 6th, seconded by Alderman from the 7th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 74. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus,
No.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Evans,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia,
Aye.
Alderman Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice,
Aye.
Alderman Gunther,
Aye.
Alderman Balmer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin, Alderwoman Grass,
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Green,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderman Rhodey,
Aye.
Alderman Todd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderman Narayan,
Aye.
Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro,
Aye.
President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Cone,
If the kids up to, just so you know, Peter here.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
27 aye votes and 1 no vote.
By your vote, staying the motion. Alderman from the 6th and 3rd read and finally passed Board Bill number 74.
That's the extent of third reading report of engrossment.
Report of enrollment.
Board Bill 32, 43, 50, 68, 69, 73, and 74.
All other business being suspended, place shall an open session to fix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. We will dispense with line items 20 through 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Wednesday, July 15th, 2020, Rules will have a meeting at 10 a.m. via webinar. Thursday, July 16th, Rules will have a meeting 10 a.m. via webinar. And Friday, July 17th, full board meeting 10 a.m. via webinar.
Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. With a Friday meeting, I'll be holding a Ways and Means Thursday morning, 10 a.m. webinar for Board Bill 94, Alderman Tots.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 1st.
I was going to say for the Thursday meeting, I haven't checked with my committee, so we might change it earlier if it's possible with Zoom. If not, it will be 10 o'clock.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 22nd, you were recognized on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, all members are present.
Excellent. You're recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move to adjourn until Friday, July the 17th at
Second.
Moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd, I believe, and a host of other people. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.